Hey guys, welcome back. Beautiful afternoon out here with my dad again today. We're splitting some wood because if you have a look behind me, I've got some IBC cages that need to be filled. So we got two fresh ones over there. That's where we sort of ended off last day after the wasps came out and tried to attack me. So we got those wasps taken care of. We got the wood splitter out. My dad is here today. As I said, I'm going to be loading the wood onto the wood splitter for him. He's going to be doing the split and throwing it in the IBC cage. And then hopefully we can make some progress. I've got a lot of wood to split here and the weather is definitely getting warmer and warmer. The bugs are out in full force, and to be honest with you, the wood splitter is not running that great today. So fingers crossed all ends well. It started well at the very least, so that's a bonus. Glad you guys are all here. Let's go. Guys, as you can see, that's pretty much how things work around here with an old splitter. Every once in a while it does what it wants and it doesn't do what you want it to. And so we leaked a little bit of fluid there. Luckily my dad shut the machine off so we didn't lose too much. Anyways, you guys would have seen before, this old splitter, it tends to leak at the seals. It needs a new seal kit, but I am going to try to get that figured out before long. Stuck in there, you guys can have a look there. So that's no good. Anyways, let's fire it back up and we'll see what happened. Every once in a while when it gets to full extension on the stroke, it'll put a bit of pressure on that seal. So what we'll do, we'll fire it up again and have a look. See those Mickey Mouse linkages in there? That's the issue with this engine. Many of you guys have asked me about this. Alright guys, we got the engine fired back up, but I think this is the issue. Check it out. Yeah, that's no good. So I'm going to shut it off. I think the issue is this. Obviously the seals need to be replaced, but I think on the back of that rod there's a nut, and I've had that nut back off before. I think that nut must have backed off. And now the stroke has gone further than it should, and as a result oil is getting past one of the seals and it won't pull itself back. I don't know, but that's what we're thinking. This is not going good, but we'll keep at her. All right guys, we got the wood splitter back to the shop and we were sort of scratching our head as to what the problem was. I can assure you that this thing is pretty old, and so I had originally thought that maybe the seals were gone on it, and as a result the fluid was leaking out. But then I got to thinking, you know what, I've had one issue with this in the entire time I've owned it, and that issue was the nut on the rod, which goes into the cylinder here, has fallen off. And I don't know why it falls off, because there is actually a lock washer. And if you guys look in there, after we open this thing up, basically this plate here comes off the end. There's the plate there, unless you've seen these before, that's what it looks like. So you guys can see that plate has an O-ring on it there. You can also see that hole in the top. That's where a hose connects to it. But this more or less goes on the end of this cylinder right here. And then there's four lock washers and 4 nuts that more or less sandwich it in place. And there's that hose I mentioned that goes to the top of that plate right here. But as I was saying, the nut, as well as the lock washer, has fallen off the rod again. And if you guys look down in there, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. You'll see inside there, see the nut nice and loose, and see the lock washer just floating around there in the bottom. Well, when that's doing that, that's obviously going to cause some leakage because the rod probably overextended. And as a result, that, as you saw out in the field, that's what happens. So if I just push this back a little bit, actually I'll leave it like that. Let's just see if we can push this rod back here just a little bit. And easier said than done. There we go. We'll slide that rod back. Oh, there we go. Okay, let's have a look. Now you guys can see what the issue is. So the rod is obviously right on there, and then you've got this piece here. I don't know what it's called, but that right there is the culprit, that nut. This is vibrated loose again, and I don't know why it keeps doing it, because there is a lock washer on it, and it looks half decent, but obviously it didn't hold it on there. Not sure what I'm going to do to keep it on there. I don't know if hydraulic fluid reacts with Loctite at all, but we'll get a way to keep it on there permanently. We're going to put this back together, put the nut back onto the end of the rod, and sorry, I didn't point close enough. The rod's actually down in that hole here. Let me just see if I can get it lined up here. All right, there we go. We pushed the rod back through, and you guys can see here, that's where the lock washer and the nut goes on. There's the lock washer and the nut goes on. And for some reason, the vibrations just cause that thing to come loose no matter what we do. So we're going to have to figure something out. But we'll tighten that down. I had a look at the seals. The seals look half decent, at least half decent enough for today. We're going to put this together, and then we'll fire it back up hopefully before long. All right, guys. Well, we got things buttoned back up here. In fact, we just put a piece of hardwood up here to try out the splitter to make sure everything was working. Everything worked out just fine. We had to top up the reservoir with a bit more hydraulic fluid. We lost a little bit to the catch pan when we took things apart, so that just got topped up. But overall, nothing is leaking at this point. There is some hydraulic fluid residue that we're just going to wipe up and get back out and split, and we'll just sort of watch it and see whether there's going to be any of that leaking going on. But I don't think so. I think our issue was over time, just like what happened to me a while back. The nut on that ram, or rod, it actually backed off, probably from vibration, despite the fact that there was that lock washer on there. And as a result, the rod was coming out further than it should have and pushing fluid past the seals that are inside the cylinder. So I think that's the issue. I'm not going to lie to you guys, what I did, because I was sick and tired of that happening to me, I just put a little tack weld on the end of that nut, so it's welded to the back of that rod there very, very lightly. And so if this starts to vibrate, which it will, it at the very least will not vibrate the nut off the rod and give me that headache. Now, if this was a brand new machine, a brand new cylinder, yeah, I probably wouldn't do that, but this thing's been around the block and come back. So instead of, worrying about it again, I figured why not? Touch her up with a little tackaroo, and that way it won't be coming off again. So we're going to get back out, do some splitting. Hopefully this old thing has a few more years left in it. Looks a little worse for wear. The I-beam's kind of bent, missing some paint, but hey, cuts the wood, heats my home. Can't go wrong. Here we go. Well guys, I'd say that's a job well done. We got probably about 4, maybe 5 totes filled. Now some of these totes were partially filled already and we just topped them up. So I don't really know for certain, but I'd say 4 or 5 totes probably if they were empty. That would be the equivalent of probably 2, maybe 3 face cords of wood or 1 bush cord. If you account for 3 face cords being 1 bush cord. So that's probably about what we got split up today, and that's pretty good. It was a pretty good operation. As you saw, my dad was doing all the splitting, I was loading. What I found was if I would load one log at a time, just in time for him to split it, I found that was a bit more efficient. If I loaded the logs up there on the platform, that little metal platform to the left of the splitter, what was happening was some of them were falling off with the rattling and getting in the way, so one at a time, just as he could split them, turned out to be best. We also made our way up here. I started taking care of some of this wood, which I had piled up for a while. That's probably a good thing because I can just about imagine what's going to be hiding in there. Snakes and spiders and probably those pesky wasps that you guys know I love. So we got some totes filled and that's the name of the game. Overall, the splitter did very, very well. After I figured out that initial problem, my dad and I sort of scratched our heads and realized that it might have been a simpler fix than we had originally thought, and that's exactly what it was. That nut coming off, even with a lock washer, quite frustrating, but as I said, a little bit of a tack welderoo that solved the game. So this old splitter lives another day. Some days I don't think it's gonna, and it just keeps coming back, so that's a good thing. If I had to rent one of these, well, the cost would add up quite quickly, because if you haven't noticed, I got a lot of firewood that I tend to split. And this thing definitely gets some miles put on it. Now it's a little worse for wear. As you can see, had a little bit of a casualty here today. When you get multiple logs, when you get multiple rounds rather, piled up here, sometimes the split piece here, it can push out this way with the splitter. And if you aren't careful, if the log's up here, it can push into this bar and, well, as a result, it bent it. Broke it off, but we'll get that welded back into place and live another day, as we say. So guys, if you like this video, make sure you give it the old like-a-roo. Make sure you subscribe. Come on back next time. I'm sure I'll be up to something. And we'll call it quits. See you then.